All right, we're back with the book of Joshua. We are in chapter 2, finishing up. We left off last week with the spies getting ready to leave Rahab's house, and they said 3 conditions that we will protect you when we return and destroy the city of Jericho. 3 conditions. 1, mark your window with a scarlet cord in order to identify your home. Number 2, have your entire family in the home with you. We're not responsible if they're somewhere else. And number 3, don't tell anybody in your family our plan or the deal's off. If word spreads, the whole thing is off. And so she agrees to this. She lowers them down through the window, reminding them, don't go straight back to the Jordan River, but go to the mountains. And they do so, and everything works beautifully. So we pick up here in chapter 2, starting in verse 21. She says, according to all your words, so be it. And she sent them away. And they departed, and she bound a scarlet cord in the window. They departed and went to the mountains and stayed there 3 days until the pursuers returned. The pursuers sought them along the way, but did not find them. So the 2 men returned, descended from the mountains, and crossed over. And they came to Joshua the son of Nun, and they told him all that had befallen them. And they said to Joshua, truly, the Lord has delivered all the land into our hands. For indeed, all the inhabitants of the country are faint-hearted because of us. Now, this trip back was no easy one. First of all, to get from Jericho to the Jordan River was about 5 miles. Then they had to cross the Jordan River, again with it being swollen this time of year. And then it was about another 7.5 miles from the Jordan River to Acacia Grove, where all the children of Israel were camped, waiting for those 3 days before they would cross over. And that's where we pick up here in chapter 3 of the book of Joshua. Father, we pray that as we begin this next chapter, that you just bless our time together. And as we move forward through this book, that again, that we would recognize that you want to work fresh in our lives. You want to give us boldness. You want us to move forward. You want us to have your word in our hearts and in our minds and to meditate on it day and night. So, Father, we just pray that you bless our time together in the name of Yeshua. Amen. All right, chapter 3 of Joshua. Then Joshua rose early in the morning, and they set out from Acacia Grove. Remember, it's about 7.5 miles from there to the Jordan River. And they came to the Jordan, and he and all the children of Israel, and lodged there before they crossed over. And so it was after 3 days, the time that he had told them, that the officers went through the camp, and they commanded the people, saying, when you see the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God, and the priests, the Levites, bearing it, then you shall set out from your place and go after it. So Joshua begins to give step-by-step orders on how this is to transpire. Now remember, this isn't a small thing. What you have here is a moving of a lot of people to go this distance. It tells us in Numbers chapter 26, verse 51, that the population of Israel at that time that had come out of Egypt was 601,730 men. Now that number does not include women and children. So if you were to include the women and children that could have been with these men, it could have been anywhere from 1.5 to 2.5 million people that were getting ready to cross the Jordan River and enter into the Promised Land. How do you coordinate all that? How do you get 1.5 to 2.5 million people across this river? Well, as we're going to see unfold here, commands are given by Joshua through God to move in a very specific way. The first thing he says, the ark is going to go before you, and you're to follow after that ark. And so he says, verse 4, yet there shall be a space between you about it of about 2,000 cubits. So he tells them in verse 4, there's going to be some space between you. I need to have space. 2,000 cubits is about 1/2 mile. In other words, there needs to be more than 1/2 mile between you and the ark. All right? There needs to be distance. So first, the priests will carry the ark across, but you must remain 1/2 mile away from it. He says in verse 4, do not come near it, that you may know the way which you must go, for you have not passed this way before. And Joshua said to the people, sanctify yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do wonders among you. So he gives them this command, stay within, stay away at least a half a mile away from the ark as it goes before you. And then he says, sanctify yourselves. Now, that word sanctify, they were to prepare themselves physically, spiritually, emotionally. The word sanctify in Hebrew comes from the word kadash, all right, which means to set apart and be holy. He's saying, make sure your lives are right with the Lord. Pray, seek God, ask him if there's any sin in my life. We're to do this very same thing. We're to sanctify ourselves daily, kadash. We're to sanctify ourselves by daily saying, Lord, if there's anything in me that is not of you, oh, please take it away. Forgive me of my sins. We're to sanctify and consecrate ourselves daily before the Lord. It was a time for the Israelites to be fully consecrated before their God in anticipation for what God was going to do. Great signs and wonders were about to take place, but they had to be ready spiritually to enter the promised land. So after speaking to the people, Joshua then in verse 6 addresses the priests. So Joshua spoke to the priests, saying, take up the ark of the covenant and cross over before the people. So they took up the ark of the covenant and went before the people. And the Lord said to Joshua, this day I will begin to exalt you in the sight of all Israel. In other words, you shall be lifted up and recognized as powerfully as Moses was. He says, that they may know that as I was with Moses, so I will be with you. You shall command the priests who bear the ark of the covenant, verse 8, when you have come to the edge of the water of the Jordan, you shall stand in the Jordan. So Joshua said to the children of Israel, come here and hear the word of the Lord your God. And Joshua said to them, by this you shall know that the living God is among you, and that he will without fail drive out from before you the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Hivites, the Perizzites, the Girgashites, the Amorites, the Jebusites. Behold, the ark of the covenant of the Lord of all the earth is crossing over before you into the Jordan. Now therefore, take for yourselves 12 men. So he gives this order and this command first to the priests, to those who will be carrying the ark of the Levitical priesthood. And he goes, take the ark, take it on your shoulders by the poles. He goes, and venture out into the Jordan. He tells them to do this knowing that something dramatic is going to happen. It's reminiscent, of course, of Moses standing at the Red Sea, and the Pharaoh's armies are gathered behind them, being blocked by the pillar of cloud and it's spinning in the pillar of fire, and they're afraid. They're backed up against the ocean. Where can we go? And Moses raises his staff, and the strong wind comes and parts the Red Sea, and the children of Israel walk forth on dry land. The sea was not only parted, but the land underneath was totally dry. No mud, no problems walking, no problems with their carts or their animals or their little ones, and they went forward on dry land. God was about to do the very same thing, and I don't want you to think, well, this is just the Jordan River. This isn't like going through the Red Sea. Well, yes, it was. This was a very powerful river. Again, remember, its banks being flooded. It could have been as much as a mile wide, a torrent river that could have easily washed anybody that stepped into it downstream. And God was about to do something amazing right there at that river, and a reminder to the children of Israel, as Moses parted the Red Sea, so I am parting the Jordan River that you might go forth. So let's continue with the story. Behold, verse 11, the ark of the covenant of the Lord of all the earth is crossing before you into the Jordan. Now therefore, he says in verse 12, take for yourselves 12 men from the tribes of Israel, 1 man from every tribe. I want you to select one person. It's going to have to be somebody pretty strong, as we're going to see here. It's going to have to be not a youth, but a strong person, a man, and 1 from each tribe. And it shall come to pass, as soon as the soles of the feet of the priests who bear the ark, verse 13, the ark of the Lord of all the earth, shall rest in the waters of the Jordan, that the waters of the Jordan shall be cut off. The waters come down from upstream, and they shall stand as a heap. So he gives this command. I want you to go in. He doesn't tell them the reason yet. He doesn't tell them what's about to take place. He's going to say, I want one man from each tribe to be selected. Now, when he says to pick up a stone, he's not talking about a small stone, something you can hold in your hand, a stone like David used to kill Goliath. He's talking about a stone. He later on tells them that you're to take these stones and put them on your shoulder and carry them to Gilgal, which is where they will set up camp before going up against the city of Jericho. So he's saying, I want you to pick up 12 stones, 12 big stones, the biggest things that you can carry. I need strong men that can do this, one man from each tribe. And he says, and when the waters are parted, as the Levites step in with the Ark of the Covenant into it, that the water will heap up on both sides. Now, this water is coming downstream from the north part of Israel, and it's coming down, and at this juncture right here, this is actually below the Sea of Galilee, between that and the Dead Sea where they cross, and that's where Jericho is, and they're going to be crossing in this place, and it says, and the waters will stand as a heap. Where does running water flowing so powerfully they can overflow its banks, where can it go? Well, this is what we're going to find out right here. Verse 14, so it was the people set out from their camps to cross over the Jordan, with the priests bearing the Ark of the Covenant before the people. And those who bore the Ark came to the Jordan, and the feet of the priests who bore the Ark dipped into the edge of the water. For the Jordan overflows all of its banks during the time of harvest, springtime. Now look what it says in verse 16. This is awesome. That the waters which came down from the upper stream stood still and rose in a heap very far away at Adam, a city which is near Zaratan. Now, you have to understand, in this area, the area is Adam and Zaratan. This isn't some place that's close by. This place is a good distance away. This place is, in my notes, there's about 10 to 15 miles upriver. Some say it could be, in some cases, it could have been up to 30 miles north of them, where these Adam and Zaratan, these two cities were at that time. These areas, that's where the river actually stopped. It actually came to a full stop 30 miles away. Not right where they were. They didn't get to see the heap of water. They simply saw the water suddenly stop, like a dam twisting these big knobs in the dam, closing off the flow of water till not a drip of water comes through, and suddenly the water stops. And yet 30 miles away in the city of Adam, we have this wall that built. How would you like to be in those two cities? The city of Adam or the city of Zaratan, and suddenly your water supply dries up. Suddenly you see this massive wall of water. It wasn't like the Israelites got to see this like they did with Moses crossing the Red Sea, but they saw a miracle take place in the fact that this river, which was 1 minute flowing powerfully and overflowing its banks, was suddenly dried up completely, and the ground underneath it, miraculously, was also dry. And so they begin to cross over this area. You know, sometimes we don't understand situations when they happen in our lives, and they certainly could only believe by what they saw that a miracle was taking place, that God had done the work. The water stood still and rose up to a heap. So the waters that went down from the Sea of Arabah, the Salt Sea, failed. In other words, from that point, at the crossing of the river, from the east to the west side of the Jordan River, from that point forward, which is again below the Sea of Galilee, in the midst between there and the Dead Sea, the water stopped. No water flowed into the Dead Sea for the time that the children of Israel crossed. For 1.5 to 2.5 million people to get across this river would not have been an easy task. And so they do this. Verse 17, then the priests who bore the ark of the covenant of the Lord stood firm on, look what it says, on dry ground in the midst of the Jordan. And all of Israel crossed over on dry ground until all the people had crossed completely over the Jordan River. Chapter 4, verse 1, and it came to pass when all the people had completely crossed over the Jordan that the Lord spoke to Joshua, saying, now take for yourselves 12 men, like he said back in chapter 11, these 12 men from the people, 1 man from every tribe, and command them, saying, take for yourselves 12 stones from there, out of the midst of the Jordan River. In other words, while after everyone has crossed over, but while the priests holding the Ark of the Covenant are still standing in the midst of the Jordan, come back in 12 men and take up these 12 stones from there. And he says, from the place where the priest's feet stood firm, and you shall carry them over with you and leave them in the lodging place where you shall lodge tonight. Then Joshua called the 12 men whom he had appointed from the children of Israel, verse 4, one man from every tribe. And Joshua said to them, cross over before the Lord, before the ark of the Lord your God, into the midst of the Jordan, each one of you, and take up a stone on his shoulder. Something big, something heavy. You're going to have to heave it up and carry it on your shoulder, according to the number of tribes of the children of Israel, that this may be a sign among you when the children ask in a time to come, saying, what do these stones mean to you? So these stones were going to be set up, we're going to find out in Gilgal, where they're going to make camp for the night. These 12 stones, these massive stones that these men carry on their shoulders, were going to be set up as a memorial so that later on, when the children of Israel happen to see the stack of 12 large stones, why are they here? They're here as a reminder how great God is. Maybe you have things in your life. Maybe you have memorial stones. Things that have happened in your life that remind you of when God has done great things in your life. Miracles that God has done. And you look back and say, oh man, I remember. My wife and I on our table have a jar. And in that jar, and it's written, we have had several jars over the years that have gotten full. But they are jars that remind us of God's faithfulness, of answered prayer. And we have these jars, and every once in a while, if you're discouraged or just things maybe aren't going good in our lives, whatever, we can pour out these promises of God's victories in our lives, the things that God has done, miracles that have taken place in our life, and begin to read through them. Miracles small and large, and we get so encouraged. We say, oh man, God, you're faithful. I remember when you did this. I remember back in 82 when you did this. I remember back in 97 when you did this. I remember in we date them and just write a little short, small piece of paper, fold them up, and we put them in what are called the blessings jars. One actually says blessings on it. And there are reminders, there are memorial stones of God's greatness and faithfulness in our lives. And it's awesome to remember back. I was reading through some recently and was reminded of what happened to me all the way back in 1978. I was serving in Thailand with a group of people, and our visas had run out. And we'd gone to the head guy there in Bangkok, Thailand to get our visas renewed, and he would not do it. He literally put his hand under the table and in such a way of saying, you put money in my hand, you'll get your new visas. Well, we didn't think that would be the right thing to do. It seemed a little crooked, a little corrupt, so we said no. He said, fine, when can you leave my country? And we said, we'll leave today. The problem was that it was a 2-day train ride from there in Bangkok to the Malaysian border, which we had to go and be out of the country for 24 hours to re-enter Thailand again. And by the time we got to our exit place in Malaysia, our visas were now 2 days late. We were expired. We were illegally in the country of Thailand. This man, when he saw our paperwork, got so angry, he told us to walk up to his office while he got in this nice air-conditioned car. And the 8 of us had to walk up there, and we're sitting in the office, and we were hot, and we were tired, we were afraid. And he takes our leader, a guy named Robbie, into a separate room, and he begins yelling at him, screaming at him. And he says, I'm going to lock you up in jail for 2 days to teach you a lesson of coming into my country with an expired visa. The girls on our team were very afraid. We'd heard horror stories about rats the size of cats in Malaysia and thinking about jail and prison. And we said, oh my goodness, I was there praising God, like Paul, we're going to go to prison. This is awesome. We get to suffer for the Lord. But it wasn't because of our righteousness that we were going to jail. It was because of visas. But nonetheless, he was angry. He says, I'm going to go get the paperwork and then I'm going to put you in jail. He walks out of the private room, walks across, and he walks right in our presence. We see him walk across, open a file cabinet, pull out the paperwork. He walks back into the room. He's out of that room for maybe 30 seconds max. When he enters back into that room with our team leader, Robbie, he suddenly begins to treat Robbie like a foreign dignitary. He begins to apologize and say, I am so sorry about this whole misunderstanding. He never received a phone call, no messages came in, but there were 8 people in that other room praying, or 7, praying diligently, praying, just begging God to do a miracle here in this situation. And in that 30 seconds, God did. And he began to apologize. So he takes us in his air-conditioned car back to the border, says, whatever you need tomorrow. We come back the next day, and we stand in line behind about 10 people trying to get their visas to come into Thailand. And he sees us, and he comes forward just like he promised. Hey, come to the front of the line, and he escorts us up. And he goes, I'm so sorry about yesterday and the confusion. And normally we would come in under a 3-month tourist visa. He stamped each of our visas for 6 months in Thailand, and we were so excited. And he goes, if you have any problems next time, just let me know. And we left going, God, what happened? 1 minute he's yelling and screaming at our team leader, I'm going to throw you in jail. And within 30 seconds he's treating us like dignitaries and giving us 6-month visas. That's the power of God. And if you continue to keep your eyes on him, as the children of Israel, we're seeing all these miracles entering into the promised land, and this is just the beginning. God too wants to do great things in your lives. So trust in him in things beyond what you can see. Trust in him beyond the things that you say, well, this seems rational, this seems right because I can see it, I can touch it, I can feel it. God wants to do great things in your lives. And as Joshua is learning what it means to be a man of courage and a man of faith, so too were the children of Israel. These were exciting times. Well, Father, as we close off chapter 3 here, I just thank you for the opportunity again to be in your word this morning. And I pray, Father, as we continue through the book of Joshua, that you would use this time in your word to encourage and increase our faith, that we would be men and women of God, seeking hard after you, hiding your word in our hearts. We love you and we praise you in the name of Yeshua. Amen.